Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? I want to first start off by saying Happy New Year to everybody who had an enjoyable 2012, and I hope they have an enjoyable 2013. I hope that everybody for 2013 sticks to their New Year's resolutions, and I hope that everyone has a safe and enjoyable year for 2013. Um, I want to start off by talking about one of the most controversial films that Quentin Tarantino has ever directed, and it's the film Django Unchained. It's basically a story about a slave who turns bounty hunter to take revenge on the plantation owners who basically stole his wife and used her for slavery and trying to free his wife from that enslavement that she's been encounter. The movie stars with Jamie Foxx, Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel L. Jackson, Kerry Washington, and of course Quentin Tarantino put himself into the part. And believe me, there's so much to talk about with this film. I'll get right into it because believe me, it's a very interesting subject to talk about with this film. Django Unchained is a film that a lot of critics are giving it an A plus. Some are calling it the greatest film they've seen all year round. I'm gonna give you an honest interpretation of the film, and to tell you the truth, the proof to you that I did see this film, I will give you a little quick glimpse. Okay, it's a little in the dark. I wish I had some light in here, but I did see the film because you know what? I saw this on bootleg because there was no way I was seeing this in the theater. Sorry. And the reason why the screen went a little black because it's a little dark in here, and I'm doing like a little nighttime review before I say goodbye to 2012 and into 2013 that we are in now. So I wanted to start off by talking about Django Unchained, and basically the way I kind of have to do this review, it's kind of hard to talk about it because you don't know where to really start with this movie, but I will be honest about it. Django Unchained is, I'll be honest with you, it is probably one of the longest Quentin Tarantino films I think he's ever done. I think the problem was because me and my wife saw it on bootleg, and she thought it was the worst piece of junk she's ever saw because her feeling on it was that the film was overly redundant. I could see her point of view because there were times in the movie where Quentin Tarantino kept going back and forth in the story. There were scenes where Django was free, then there were times when he was a slave again, then he was a slave, then he became free again. It almost was like Tarantino wanted to purposely write a long, shocking piece, and that's what this film kind of felt like. It wasn't really something that you go in and you take this film seriously. I think when he made this film, I think he wanted to show how ugly slavery was, but the problem with what he was doing was that you can't really. This is sort of like a white trash fantasy, if you want to really be honest. Because if you notice throughout the whole film, anyone who's seen it, he has an issue with white trash people. It seems like anybody who was in the film, with the exception of what's his name, Christopher Waltz or Kristen Waltz, whatever his name was, he was about the best acting I've seen in the whole film. Between him, Jamie Foxx, and I'm gonna get to the others in a minute, those two on screen were phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie on it. The acting was very, very good. The problem was that it was just too long. The movie was almost 3 hours long, and I felt like Tarantino basically forced us to try to watch a film, and it didn't feel like there was any like a break in between the films. And I noticed because when I saw this film, and of course on bootleg, I noticed people laughed at certain parts, and I don't know if this was filmed in a white theater or in a black theater. You can't really tell. You just know that people are laughing at certain parts. But it just seems like, the film was overly long. It could have been cut down to at least 2 hours. I also had a problem with some of the African American actors who were doing certain. I would think that black people wouldn't want to do a slave movie, particularly that now that we have an African American president. It just seems like we're going ass backwards. I noticed that ever since President Obama became, who got into history as the first African American president to be elected twice in office, it just seems like, I noticed there's been a lot of slave films, a lot of like coonery bullshit coming out. Like, for example, like this Django Unchained. Like, why would people want to go to the movie theater and spend 3 hours watching something that happened in the past? And this is also based on a white man's fantasy. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is not black. Quentin Tarantino is a white man who created a black fantasy. I mean, people are going into this film thinking that, well, oh, Quentin Tarantino broke ground. No, he didn't. This is just a director who basically made a fantasy film about a black man killing white people in the plantation era. And okay, maybe that was interesting to him. It would have been interesting to have been shorter, which, I just wish it had cut down the 3 hour period. And I was also disappointed that, I wouldn't think that some of the black actors would do a film like this. Like, there was Samuel L. Jackson. He was like the Uncle Tom, he played a character named Stevenson, who basically was like the sellout house nigga who basically did everything that Calvin Candy wanted him to do, and his father before him, because he was like a veteran house nigga. Basically, he was even like seduced to their evil, which was kind of like a bizarre movie because, most of these films you see where there's a house black, basically they're like, oh yes sir, and they're not as hard. This particular character was just plain evil, and even with his own black people, he was selling them out. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised if he was nominated for this. And like my wife was telling me, why would he even want this Oscar? Would you want to be remembered for playing a house Negro when you played, such great characters in other films? You know what it is. I think that Quentin Tarantino didn't want to be an apologist for the world to say, you know what, I'm sorry I made a black film. He just made the film that he wanted to make, and I guess his thing was, if you want to be in it and get paid, hey, the role is yours. If you don't want it, hey, I'll find somebody else. But I think, I was just shocked that Samuel L. Jackson and Kerry Washington would do a film like this. I mean, Kerry was just defending the film like, well, it shows the atrocities of slavery that black people went through. Yeah, it does, but what her problem with her theory is, what Kerry doesn't understand is, this is the point of view of Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino's not black, he's white. I mean, I don't mean to bring race into it, but something, some people feel that the only group of people who could tell a slave story or tell the African American experience is black people. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but I think black people are better known to tell these type of stories than some man who's creating a black fantasy. I mean, this is Quentin Tarantino on the screen making stereotypes. I mean, he's made every white trash character you could think of was in this film. I mean, there was the trashy ones that couldn't talk, and then there were the sadistic ones who could talk and had some sort of education, but they were more. So it seemed like one white character was more evil than the next one. But what was really strange about this film was that it's just that everybody was so concerned about the N word. I wasn't concerned about the N word. I was more concerned about how these characters are, the imagery that you're putting on the screen. You basically have created every white trash character, and the only interesting character was Django. He was the only interesting character of the whole film because he was so enraged by the fact that he was in slavery and had to take revenge and had to kill whoever needed to be killed. And he was, and to tell you the truth, all the I know that African American actors have to do what they have to do to get a role, but I wouldn't think that certain African American people would do those type of films. I honestly believe that we're going backwards in movies. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I'm not gonna lie on Tarantino. There were parts of that movie that were good. Like there was a scene in the film that I'm sure that everybody remembers where Don Johnson and his clan of KKK members were arguing about how the hoods were made. That was very funny in the film, and I think also my wife and I can agree because we saw it together that the last like 5 minutes of the film was the best part of the whole film. Not because the film ended, which I was glad, but the fact that that Django got the revenge he needed to take on, particularly on Stevenson, Samuel L. Jackson's part, because I think that of all the characters he really took his frustration on, it was Stevenson because he couldn't believe his own kind would do that to him. I mean, basically, they burned Django's nuts. I'm sure they probably raped his wife, beat her up, made her go into slavery, and now Django is at the point where he's this frustrated. You know, I have to tell you that something, of all the films that he has done, this was the most controversial, and I know people will go into this and like, oh my god, well, I don't want to see a movie about someone calling blacks nigger all day and all the stereotypes and slavery. If you want to be honest, I would suggest that you all bootleg this. I mean, because you're not going to sit in the theater for 3 hours. To be totally honest, on bootleg, they're doing it pretty well, but this is not worth the kind of money that you want to spend good hard money on, because I feel like Tarantino is still in his little fantasy world, and you don't want to play into that fantasy world. If you're smart, just download it or whatever, because I wouldn't spend that kind of money on a 3 hour picture that basically was overly redundant. And because this film was overly redundant, and because the story kept going back and forth and it didn't know what it wanted to do, and also the problem is that people are talking about the controversy with Spike Lee, saying, well, oh, Spike Lee never saw the film and how can he judge? But something, I respect Spike Lee in that decision, because to tell you the truth, I wouldn't want to see a film that, yes, it does disrespect African American ancestry, but at the same time, you didn't really see the film, but I could see that, what, maybe Spike Lee thought, what, look at the films he has done in the past. It's obviously he's going to do another nigger flick. And now that Tarantino has done this flick, it almost seems like they're in the same scale of being angry. It seems like when Spike Lee did Jungle Fever, that was the angry film of the 90s about interracial relationships. Tarantino has done the ultimate white trash, I'm obsessed nigger flick that he did. So now you got the two films, and the problem is that even though these two directors don't get along, but they make the same type of films where they're both angry. And that's what it seemed like. It seemed like there was a lot of anger in this whole debate of, well, Spike Lee is jealous of Tarantino. Something? It's not about jealousy. I think that, Spike Lee felt like, what? I'm not going to see a slave film that I could watch, some coonery buffoonery that Tyler Perry does. And something, I respect his opinion on that. And to tell you the truth, I do agree, because I wouldn't spend that kind of money neither. Only because I feel like, what, I don't want to go to a movie theater and see blacks being disrespected and they feel like, well, okay, what, well, we're going to laugh at Tarantino, this is a good time, and white people going to the movie theater. And it's funny because they do laugh at this type of shit that Tarantino does. So, you know what it is? In a grading system, I would have given this movie about a D, because something, the movie, I'll put it to you this way, the movie was too long, it was overly redundant, African Americans who were starred in this should be ashamed of themselves because they could have done better. Django was okay, but you know something? He was the only interesting character. Very disappointed in Samuel L. Jackson because I didn't think he would do a movie like this. But obviously, he's all about the money. And Kerry Washington, you need to step up on your point because, you know, while you're defending slavery, you're not looking at the problem of the director himself. You're saying that this is about the atrocities. If that's the case, why is Leonardo DiCaprio downplaying the film? I mean, he's on the low key. He doesn't even want to be sort of represented to this. He doesn't even want to go to the cameras and go to Access Hollywood and all the talk shows and talk about the film. It just seems like Jamie Foxx and Kerry Washington and Quentin are the only ones talking about it. And I don't blame Leo because, you know, who the hell wants to be known as hell? Well, you know, I did a nigger flick and I talked about niggers throughout the whole film. You know, it's all about imagery. And to tell you the truth, you know, Quentin does have some disturbing imagery. There were parts of the movie that were good, but it could have made short. But I'm gonna be honest with you, you know, this is the one slave film that I think all of you should bootleg. And if you want to take money out of his pocket, go see it, but spend $5 on it only. So hit me up, tell me what your comments are. You know, I would love to know what you think about this whole controversy. But like I said again, you know, this is a story that, you know, it's not for everybody. And you know what? If you are easily offended and you're not into this, then don't see this film at all. If you're just a person that wants to have a, as they say, a bloody good time, you know, just go into the film and, you know, enjoy yourself. But for me, I think that this film was kind of disappointing, a little too long, with the exception of the last 5 minutes being the best part. But otherwise, Tarantino, sorry, your slave film is not going to attract everybody, particularly when you have history in the making. So, like I said, use your mind. It's your best weapon. You all take care of yourselves and enjoy the new year. Take care of yourself.